This is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Kayode Okikiolu.
Tonight, heartbroken family members of 22 of 36 military personnel who died during an attack by bandits and a helicopter crash in Niger State say goodbye as their loved ones are laid to rest in Abuja. ECOWAS has not declared war on the people of Niger Republic. Regional bloc clarifies, says there is no plan to invade the country. Minister of Works Dave Umahi reads the riot acts to federal contractors in the Northwest, directs switch to use of concrete technology for road construction, or risk being blacklisted by the government. Again, the federal government says Port Harcourt refinery will begin refining crude by December this year.
And on business news tonight, Nigeria's GDP growth slows to 2.51% in the second quarter of this year amid challenging economic situation in the country.
On sports news tonight, Super Falcons of Nigeria moves 8 steps up in the latest FIFA Women's World Rankings after an impressive World Cup performance.
From Abuja, the nation's capital, rescue operations at the site of the building that collapsed in the Garki area of Abuja suspended as the building is now at ground zero.
It was a sobering atmosphere today as the nation paid her last respects to 22 of the 36 military personnel who died on August the 14th in an ambush by bandits and a helicopter crash in Niger State as they were laid to rest. The burial, which was done in adherence with military protocol at the National Military Cemetery in Abuja, had the family members of the dead soldiers, the Minister of Defense, the Chief of Defense Staff, and other service chiefs in attendance. At the solemn event, the Chief of Defense Staff gave the assurance that the military will ensure the death of the military personnel is avenged. Our defense correspondent, Kayla Megwa, reports.
The military flag is flown at half-mast, a tribute to the 36 fallen heroes who paid the ultimate price while in service to their country. In attendance are the service chiefs, the Chief of Defense Staff, and the Ministers of Defense. Each of them make a beeline for the grieving families on arrival. The grief of the families is understood. In Niger State, on the 14th of August 2023, military personnel were ambushed by bandits, causing the death of their loved ones serving in the military. A helicopter sent to evacuate the casualties of that attack was also destroyed in a crash whose cause is yet to be determined. In all, 36 gallant soldiers were killed in service to their country. After the last post is sounded and flags are given to the grieving families, the Chief of Defense Staff makes a promise to the families of the deceased.
To the bandits, terrorists, and perpetrators of violence who seek to sow division and fear among our people, know this: our resolve will not waver. We will hunt you down, we will bring you to justice, and we will restore peace and security to every corner of our nation. Your actions may cause pain and suffering, but they will never extinguish the spirit of unity and resilience that burns within us. Today, as we lay our fallen heroes to rest, let us remember that their sacrifice serves as a reminder of the price of freedom. Let us honor their memory by striving for a Nigeria where no man's lives are lost in the pursuit of peace.
The
bodies have been lowered and the wreaths have been laid, bringing an end to the story of the short lives these men lived, dying in service of their country, dying so Nigerians like you and I can sleep in peace. And while that peace is not yet fully assured, the military said their resolve is stronger now than ever before to ensure that banditry and terrorism is brought down to its barest minimum. And they're asking Nigerians to give them the support they need in this regard. From the military cemetery in Abuja, Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
May their souls rest in peace. To the political crisis in neighboring Niger, President of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has clarified that the regional body has neither declared war on Nigerians, nor does it have any plan to invade the country. According to Dr. Omar Toure, the organization is hoping that all diplomatic efforts will result in constructive action on the side of the junta, while preparations to deploy continue if the need for such force becomes compelling. He made the clarification today at a media briefing in Abuja. Our foreign affairs correspondent, Gloria Umezoke, reports.
After weeks of relentless engagement between the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, and the military in Niger Republic, reports that the ECOWAS might be beating the drums of war with the impending military intervention raged. It is for this reason that the ECOWAS president tells a media conference that he wants to set the record straight.
We don't want people to be confused. The deployment of the standby force is not an invasion. This is what we want to really ask you to help people understand. It is not an invasion. It is a deployment to restore constitutional order, done on the basis of community laws to which Niger has subscribed. The deployment of the standby force to restore constitutional order is part of the implementation of an instrument that exists that has existed for several years.
As the directive to prepare the regional bloc's enforcement mechanism subsists, the ECOWAS president frowns at the transition timeline, reminding the Nigerian military of their responsibility to ensure the security and safety of the ousted president and his family.
We believe that even now it is not too late for the military authorities in Niger to reconsider their action and listen to the voice of reason, as the regional leaders will not condone coup d'etat.
He re-echoes that a military coup is a tragedy that was non-existent after the rule of law was restored in the West African region until about 3 years ago, and therefore must not be allowed to fester.
The Republic of Niger is not a target for destruction by ECOWAS. And ECOWAS will never allow the people of Niger to suffer in the hands of enemies within or without.
The military's action, he maintains, is a major distraction that has plunged the people of Niger into an unprecedented socio-economic crisis. He's hoping that diplomatic efforts will not degenerate into the use of force, but rather yield desired outcomes in the coup-torn West African nation. From Abuja, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Staying with multilateral matters, the 2023 BRICS summit has now come and gone, with new members announced. Well, Nigeria is not on that list, and this has drawn various reactions, while speculations run rife as to the reason why. But Vice President Kashim Shettima, who represented the president at the event, says the country has not even applied for BRICS membership. Our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty DBS, spoke with him at the end of a series of meetings which he attended during the summit.
I assure you that Nigeria is committed to shaping and fortifying the global framework and governance concerning all major international issues.
In line with his speech centered on a multipolar world built on partnerships at the BRICS Plus meeting, Vice President Kashim Shettima also participated in a number of side meetings, as well as the China-Africa Leaders Roundtable. Commissioner to South Africa was with him for all the meetings.
We had side discussions with a couple of countries, including Iran Libya, Egypt, and a whole lot of them, not less than 9 in number. And all these discussions were geared about South-South cooperation. The South-South cooperation is the engine force driving BRICS. So we are leveraging on that to be part of the party. And I can assure you that Nigeria is not left behind.
We believe that the engagements we had in the last couple of days will translate into renewed hope for our culture and for our people, especially our engagement at the China-Africa Forum. And with the 3 initiatives that dwell, 1 on agriculture, 2 on industrialization, and thirdly on human capital development, truly rhymed with the new mantra of renewed hope of the Tinubu administration. We will pursue vigorously to translate into realities all those priority areas of engagement with the Chinese government.
Addressing the reactions which have trailed the absence of Nigeria on the list of new members joining the BRICS alliance, the Vice President says it is a process for which Nigeria is still consulting.
So far, we have not applied for the membership of BRICS, fundamentally informed by the fact that my principal, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is a true democrat that believes in consensus building. There are so many variables that need to be taken into cognizance. We have to evaluate so many tendencies, issues, and scope that requires engagements with the Economic Advisory Council, with the Federal Executive Council, and even with the National Assembly before an informed decision towards joining the BRICS will be taken.
Vice President Shettima leaves South Africa this Friday with a word to Nigerians living in the country to be law-abiding and to respect the host citizens wherever they live in the Republic. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
Well, back home, President of the Nigerian Bar Association, Mr. Yakubu Mekiel, is asking the present administration to urgently tackle the challenges faced by all arms of the criminal justice system. The senior advocate of Nigeria wants government to immediately intervene in the areas of welfare package, infrastructure, logistics, amongst other needs. Mr. Mekiel was a guest on our political program, Politics Today.
How have we dealt with the police force? Have we actually done what we are supposed to do for the police to properly equip them to discharge that onerous responsibility? Because every citizen is presumed innocent until the contrary is proved. So it's a Herculean task for an investigator, and it costs a lot of money. But how we prepared them in terms of the trainings, in terms of the equipment, and look at the sophistry of the times that we live today. Would you say that the Nigerian police is properly equipped in terms of the human resource and the equipment to discharge that responsibility? Look at the welfare. How much have we also done for the courts? How much have we done for the judiciary? One thing that remains an emergency in this country, number one, is the salaries and allowances of judicial officers. And I have said it times without number, that it seemed to me, and it appears that we have avalanche of evidence to support the fact that successive governments have decided to keep the judiciary where it's been since 2007, Terry, without a review of their salaries and allowances. Look at the concrete economic realities today, the inflation. And to know that a justice of the Supreme Court, for instance, receives 750,000 naira his salaries every month. Where would that take him to within the concrete economic realities in this country?
In part two, after the break, bandits demand 4 million naira as ransom for each of the National Youth Service Corps members abducted in Zamfara State while on their way to their place of primary assignment. But that's in a moment. Stay with us. Well, you're welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live from Channels Television. As a reminder of our top stories. Heartbroken family members of 22 of 36 military personnel who died during an attack by bandits and a helicopter crash in Niger State say goodbye as their loved ones are laid to rest in Abuja. ECOWAS has not declared war on the people of Niger Republic. The regional bloc clarifies, says there is no plan to invade the country. Minister of Works Dave Umahi reads riot acts to federal contractors in the Northwest, directs a switch to use of concrete technology for road construction or risk being blacklisted by the government. And again, the federal government says the Port Harcourt refinery will begin refining crude by December this year. Well, in line with a presidential mandate regarding the country's local refining capacity, the Port Harcourt refinery is set to start producing by December. During a facility tour today by the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Oil, Senator Heineken Lokwabiri, in company of other senior management staff of NNPC Limited, said that considering the level of progress recorded in the Port Harcourt refinery rehabilitation project, the plant will come back on stream by December this year. He goes on to say that Warri refineries will come on stream by the end of the first quarter of next year, while Kaduna will also come on board towards the end of next year. A combination of these three refineries and a private-owned refinery in the country are expected to put an end to fuel importation into Nigeria. And President Bola Tinubu has approved the appointment of Mrs. Mojoyoluwa Dekaluth Thomas as the new Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Nigeria Electricity Liability Management Company for a term of 4 years. The special advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Ajurin Galale, disclosed this in a statement. It says Mrs. Dekaluth Thomas had served as acting MD and CEO of Nemco since the tenure of a pioneer MD and CEO, Mr. Adebayo Fagbemi, which ended on May the 8th. The President also approved the appointment of Mr. Dimla Joel Nchini to serve as the substantive Executive Director of Liability Management of Nemco. Prepare for a fight. The Minister of Works, Mr. David Umahi, has challenged all federal contractors who are resisting the use of concrete in the execution of road projects in the country. It says the use of asphalt by some of the contractors is a source of funds depletion for the government, and any contractor who is not ready to work with concrete technology will not get jobs from the ministry. He stated this in Abuja during a meeting with contractors handling projects in the Northwest region.
My team and I, we inspected the Abuja-Kaduna route being done by Julius Beja. I saw a very beautiful work there yesterday, and I want to commend them very highly. I'm also very worried about the planning of the work, the slow pace of the work. I am ready and set for a fight with contractors who are resisting this concrete technology. Some of you even resist it without technical explanation. Why can you compare concrete to asphalt in the downward, in the downward part of this country, in the south, south, southeast, southwest, and the most part of north central? How can you compare the two? by insisting on this asphalt, you want to continue to keep our foreign reserve depleted and Naira thrown into a very deep problem. We will help Nigerians by introducing concrete road in most of our roads. So if you are going to bid any contract under me and you are not ready for concrete, in fact, I'm not even offering any design to be on asphalt other than asphalt overlay.
Enter security. Bandits are demanding 4 million naira to free each of the National Youth Service Corps members which they abducted recently in Zamfara State. A relative of one of the victims told Channels Television that the bandits called with their number to inform them of the abduction and asked for 4 million naira ransom. The bandits abducted the 8 NYC members on a highway within Zamfara State last Friday while on their way from Uyo, the Akwa Ibom State capital, to Sokoto State in an Akwa Ibom Transport Company AKTC bus. They were to join their counterparts in Sokoto for the mandatory national service when their vehicle was intercepted by the bandits. Authorities at the NYC had earlier said efforts are on to ensure the rescue of the Corps members. For more of the news at 10, let's head over to our Abuja studio where Gloria Omezoke is sitting by with more stories. Hello, Gloria.
Hello, many thanks, Kayode. Here in Abuja, we begin with rescue efforts at the site of the building that collapsed on Lagos streets in the Gariki area of Abuja, which has now been suspended as the building is now at ground zero. Residents say the building, which caved in at about 11 p.m. on Wednesday, followed strong winds and heavy rainfall and was already shaky with cracks on it before the unfortunate incident. Our correspondent, Dele Omoyeni, who has now been covering the incident, reports.
2 days ago, standing on this piece of land was a 2-story building, with the ground floor being used for commercial activities and the first and second floors as residential apartments. However, about 48 hours later, left in its wake following its collapse are sadly 2 dead bodies and 37 other persons receiving treatment for various degrees of injuries. This occurrence has no doubt reinforced the resolve of the Minister of the FCT, Mr. Nyesom Wike, to bring down dangerous buildings across the nation's capital. The building caved in during a heavy rainfall, which has become almost a daily occurrence in the nation's capital this month. The building is situated in the Gariki village area, one of the oldest settlements in Abuja's city center, and residents want buildings in the area to be subjected to integrity tests to forestall future disasters. Nevertheless, the 37 persons rescued from the incident were taken to the National Hospital, Gariki Hospital, and the general hospitals in Asokoro and Nyanya, as well as 2 private hospitals. We were not given access to the victims when we visited some of these facilities. Dele Omoyeni, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the Emir of Gariki, His Royal Highness Usman Nga Kopi, has appealed to the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Mr. Nyesom Wike, to carry the community along in its efforts to ensure compliance with the building code. The Emir, who appeared disturbed by the Minister's directive to bring down all dangerous buildings, said that some of his subjects would be affected by the exercise.
So there's nothing wrong for Mr. Minister to come to say they have to come back and evaluate the houses. He's in the right path. He's right. Even he doesn't request for that, I can also demand for it myself. Because I will not be happy and nobody will be happy. This is how this cause repeated history. You understand? So he's on that path. My only appeal I want to request is, first and foremost, we the community should cooperate and support whatever the government is trying to do. And my appeal to the minister is that we are ever ready to support him, to cooperate with him, so that he's able to execute his projects. And my prayer to him is that we would love him to have a roundtable with our stakeholders, because there are so many challenges within the chiefdom.
But data privacy laws among West African member states is a major impediment to efforts towards investigating and prosecuting cases of money laundering and terrorist financing in the region. This is part of findings from the 5-day forum in Abuja, put together by the Intergovernmental Action Group Against Money Laundering in West Africa, bordering on how to curb money laundering and terrorist financing in the region. The organization made 25 recommendations, which includes the need to empower anti-graft agencies in the region with investigative and prosecutorial powers.
A number of anti-corruption agencies currently without investigative and prosecutorial powers should be empowered so as to strengthen their operations or any alternative measures that would give them rights and full capacities to follow up the disseminations to judicial authorities. Digitalizing public sector processes and procedures with a view to ensuring efficiency in the service and taking other measures to limit human interaction in those processes and procedures, especially with respect to making payments, bidding, or participating in tenders. This should be considered as part of a high-level response to corruption in every nation. ECOWAS Commission should strengthen and integrate the network of anti-corruption as a statutory committee and provide the network with required resources to carry out its work of strengthening regional capacity, cooperation, and collaboration against corruption. Interagency collaboration is not organized or legislated, and in some instances, data privacy laws impede the ability of law enforcement to obtain information needed for asset investigations.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Nigeria's GDP slows to 2.51% in the second quarter of 2023 owing to subsidy removal. That's in business news. Do join us again. Welcome back. You're still watching the news at 10, coming to you live on Channels Television. Governor Abdul Kefas of Taraba State says education is key to ending the insecurity bedeviling the nation and seeks the support of Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TET Fund, to end the menace in his state. Governor Kefas, who noted that Taraba State has one of the highest out-of-school children in the country, hailed the support of TET Fund in the state's tertiary institutions. He made the request at a meeting with the TET Fund leadership in Abuja.
Because of the policies I have in place, I cannot succeed without your support. And I've discovered that one of the key reasons for insecurity, the growing insecurity, is lack of education. They said in Taraba we have one of the highest numbers of out-of-school children. So if at the primary and the secondary level we don't harvest these children, they can't even go to the university or any higher institution. And I know that TET Fund has some intervention. I'm here to solicit for more entrepreneurship centers in Taraba State to be able to train our youth, to give them direction to be self-employed. And also to ask for computer-based test center, CBT centers, to be able to accommodate more of our children in writing jams and other computer-based tests. We need such centers more in Taraba. To ask for e-library in Taraba.
Well, that's it from the nation's capital. It's back to you, Coyote.
Well, thank you, Gloria. More stories now. Talent is essential, but creativity needs to be given the right motivation to get the best results. This is a view of Nigerian poet and literary scholar Professor Nduka Otiono. While speaking with Channels Television's Ijoma Yato, he emphasized the need for the Nigerian government to invest more in education and create the right environment for creatives to thrive.
We have to provide the support. Creativity has to be spurred. You know, it's not just enough that individuals feel the compulsion to create pieces of art. It's also necessary that the enabling environment is there, one that allows a complete infrastructure for the production and consumption of material culture to take place, also of intellectual production. And so these would include libraries, it includes grants, as we have in the Western world. Unfortunately, our governments haven't taken this seriously. In this part of the world, it includes appointments of poet laureates for cities. Why would a city like Lagos or Benin or Kano not have poet laureates? And in any other case, there are also other parts of culture that needs to be supported. One that seems to have had the more material support in Nigeria is entertainment. You know, that is so you see musicians and all of that. You also see Nollywood. However, literary arts haven't enjoyed that kind of support.
Well, to catch the full interview with Professor Nduka Otiono, do watch Diaspora Network tomorrow, Saturday, at 7:30 p.m. Well, to the economy now. The new Nigeria Labour Force Survey, adopted by the National Bureau of Statistics, has been receiving criticisms from economists and analysts who are familiar with the jobs terrain in the country. But some of them believe that the 1-hour criterion for measurement of employment, among other features, is faulty and may be misleading to policymakers in the country. The new methodology, which was agreed upon at the 19th International Conference of Labour Statisticians in Africa, was adopted by NBS in April. Our business correspondent, John Mekwa, has more.
Nigeria's unemployment rate was at 33.33% in March 2021. With no data released for about 2 years, the National Bureau of Statistics announced its adoption of a new labor force survey in April 2023. The first set of data from the new methodology now places unemployment at 5.3% in the fourth quarter of 2022 and dropped further to 4.1% in the first quarter of 2023. This huge difference has been attributed to some details in the new methodology of the Nigeria Labour Force Survey. For instance, any productive engagement for an hour or more is termed employment. Also, working age, which used to be for individuals between the age of 15 and 64, has now been expanded to accommodate people beyond 64 years.
About 95% of people that are working in Nigeria are working in informal sector. But just to show you that this data now reflect exactly what is happening in the economy as a whole. You have people that are in the university, professors that are 70 years of age. In the whole methodology, it means that those people are not going to be considered at all when we are estimating people that are employed in the country. And they are contributing a lot to our economy.
Analysts who are conversant with the challenge of unemployment in the country are finding it hard to connect a 4.1% unemployment rate with the reality.
This current methodology could be very misleading, because we still have a contradictory reality, from the current, data.
While it's a new method in Nigeria, pilot countries for the new method in Africa include Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, Namibia, Tunisia, although adoption has been in more countries since 2016.
Best practice, best benchmarks, global benchmarks, they are beautiful. They create opportunity for comparison. But we have also advocated that, look, beyond best practice, we should also progressively start looking at the issue of best fit.
yes, we have the global data, then how exactly can we interpret this data within the context of our reality? Our major worry is this, and we hope government will play its role, and the new ministers will play their role in making the best use of this data. It's weaponizing those data.
Analysts who are raising questions on the new labor force survey base their concerns on the fact that if the unemployment data does not capture the real situation, then it may not prompt the right policies in areas of urgent need by the executive arm of government. Ini John Mekwa, Channels Television News.
A call is being made to the African Union to ensure that Africans are at the forefront of building the infrastructure needed to facilitate the Continental Free Trade Agreement. Else, the continent will be regressing to its checkered history of colonialism. But this is according to a former permanent representative of the African Union to the United States, Dr. Arikane Chiombo-Kwao, who says that there must be a deliberate policy in this regard that requires that at least 60% of the contract are given to Africans. She was speaking in an interview with Channels Television's Malkwe Ogun-Yusuf on hard copy.
Of all the required pillars of Africa's development, the trade is one issue that the heads of states have been able to deliver. However, here is my biggest fear. As long as there's no free movement of people, it's going to be very difficult to implement the African Continental Free Trade Area. As long as we still have the exodus of African capacity, we are going to have issues with implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. My biggest fear right now is that because of the African Continental Free Trade Area, we have now put a system in place where if we do not wake up to the reality, we are going to be handing Africa back to the colonizers, this time on a silver platter. Who has the funds to build the transcontinental highway? It's not us, Black people. Who has the funds and the capacity to bring about the development, to build the ports, to build the infrastructure that is required? It is not us. So who are the companies that are getting the contracts to implement the African Continental Free Trade Area? They're Chinese companies. They're Middle Eastern companies. They're European companies. They're Indian companies. It's everybody else except us. I have not seen a push to promote Africans coming together as a continent. I've not seen a push to line up the opportunities and say 60% of these must be occupied, must be run. These contracts must be given to Africans, must be given to Black people. I've not seen that document that's demanding that X amount must stay with the people. That is where I see the problem going to be. If we do not manage the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, we are going to be handing Africa back to the colonizers, this time on a silver platter. That is my fear, and I hope it does not come to fruition. We need to make sure that we speak very strongly to it. We need a document that says, at a minimum, 60% of all the contracts must go to the Africans.
Well, Anno Audo is here with more business stories on the news at 10.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you, Kayode. Hello and welcome to Business News. Let's begin with Nigeria's gross domestic product. It has grown by 2.51% year-on-year in real terms in the second quarter of this year, which is about 0.2 percentage points higher than 2.31% recorded in the first quarter of this year. Well, that's according to the latest report coming from the National Bureau of Statistics. However, that report from the NBS also shows that this growth rate is 1.03% lower when you compare it to the 3.54% recorded in the second quarter of last year. It is also largely attributed to the challenging economic conditions being experienced in Nigeria, especially in the aftermath of the fuel subsidy removal by the federal government. Key highlights of the GDP report shows that its performance in the period was driven mainly by the services sector, which of course recorded a growth of 4.42% and contributed 58.4% to the aggregate GDP. At the same time, the agriculture sector grew by 1.5%, representing an improvement from the growth of 1.2% recorded in the second quarter of last year. Let's talk about the real growth of the oil sector. It was 1.6 percentage points lower year on year at minus 13.43% in the second quarter of this year, while the non-oil sector's growth was 0.81 percentage points higher than the first quarter of this year at 3.58%. And outside our shores, the U.S. Federal Reserve says it may need to raise interest rates further to ensure the country's inflation is contained. The Fed Chair, Jerome Powell, confirmed this today, admitting both to easing price pressures and the surprising overperformance of the U.S. economy, while pledging to move carefully at upcoming meetings. The chair also explained the policymakers will proceed with care as they decide whether to tighten further if the world's biggest economy continues to grow above trend, as it could put further progress on inflation at risk. He, however, says the central bank has not yet concluded that its benchmark interest rate is high enough to be sure the inflation returns to 2% target. MasterCard is set to stop offering Binance-branded cards in Latin America and the Middle East, and that's according to embattled cryptocurrency exchange Binance. In a post made via X, formerly known as Twitter, the world's largest crypto exchange announced that MasterCard will soon stop offering Binance-branded cards to those areas, which allows customers to use their crypto assets to purchase goods. And this development is a sign of how traditional financial institutions are now growing worry of the working with a company as it faces intense regulatory scrutiny. Wider concerns are still going on around financial compliance within the crypto industry. And back home, Nigeria's stock market has ended the fourth week of August and Friday's trading session in the green. So it is positive outcome today, following rebound of bargain hunting activities and, of course, the price of some valued stocks. John Mekwa has the details.
Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, what a week this has been. Topsy-turvy movement in the market, but we close on a positive note. That is good news. Dangote Sugar, what's the magic mover today? Gained 3 naira 50 kobo to close at 47 naira 50 kobo after trading in value 773.93 million naira. That makes it the market mover, and thank God it's a green color. So, but anyway, let's look at what's going on with top trades. We also have some very positive movements there. Dangote, we already told you about. NASCON moved about 465 million in the market today, as well as Transcorp 442 million. So, of course, the all-share index is very comfortable and looking good at 65,558.91 after adding 0.24% on the all-share index, and the market cap smiling and getting close to 36 trillion naira. This is a good place to end the week. It's a good one, and the bull is very happy about that. So let's hope that this positive breath is built on from next week. Hopefully, we will see investors, buying more stocks, and that will move the market higher. That's the Stock Market Report. Back to you, Anne.
Thank you, Rini. Well, I think it's safe to say an amen to that prayer. Well, let's find out how other markets around the world fared at the close of trade today. Thank you for watching Business News Tonight. I'm Anne Nwawodo. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. It's back to you, Kayode.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you, Anne. Russian authorities say 10 bodies and flight recorders have been found after a plane said to be carrying the Wagner mercenary group boss, Yevgeny Prigozhin, crashed in Moscow. But this comes amidst blame that Russia was behind the crash. But the Kremlin says the allegations are a complete lie. Here's Simon Puser with more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The Kremlin in Russia says it has no role in the death of the Wagner mercenary boss Yevgeny Prigozhin. Dmitry Peskov said there's a lot of speculation amid the tragic death, but that any suggestion the Kremlin ordered the crash was a complete lie. The private jet that crashed near Moscow on Wednesday killed all 10 people on board. Western politicians and commentators have suggested Prigozhin was assassinated on Moscow's orders. Earlier, the UK Defence Ministry said Prigozhin is highly likely to be dead after the crash.
Well, our intelligence suggests that Prigozhin was most likely on the plane. We're obviously monitoring the situation very closely, working with our allies to establish what happened. But the most important thing here is for Putin to end his illegal invasion of Ukraine, which is causing untold suffering to people. And we will continue to stand with Ukraine, support them so that they can resist that aggression from Russia.
Donald Trump's mugshot has been released by authorities in Georgia, the first ever mugshot of a former US president. In the arrest on charges of plotting to overturn the state's 2020 election results, Mr. Trump had to pay a bail bond of $200,000 to be released from the Atlanta jail while he awaits trial. He was inside the facility for around 20 minutes, where dozens of his supporters gathered outside. Afterwards, he described the case as a travesty of justice. It was his 4th arrest in 5 months in a criminal case.
A sad day for America. This should never happen. If you challenge an election, you should be able to challenge an election. I thought the election was a rigged election, a stolen election, and I should have every right to do that. As you know, you have many people that you've been watching over the years do the same thing, whether it's Hillary Clinton or Stacey Abrams or many others. When you have that great freedom to challenge, you have to be able to, otherwise you could have very dishonest elections. What has taken place here is a travesty of justice. We did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. And everybody knows it. I've never had such support. And that goes with the other ones, too. What they're doing is election interference. They're trying to interfere with an election. There's never been anything like it in our country before. This is their way of campaigning. And this is one instance, but you have 3 other instances. It's election interference.
Police in Greece say they have made 79 arson arrests over wildfires ravaging the country. The Civil Protection Minister said there had been several attempts by arsonists to start new fires on Mount Parnitha, northwest of Athens. The blaze is one of hundreds in the nation where wildfires have already killed at least 20 people this week alone. Summer wildfires are common in Greece, and scientists have linked the increasing frequency and intensity of extreme weather events, including heat waves, to climate change. Luis Rubiales has refused to step down as president of the Spanish Football Federation following his behavior at the Women's World Cup final on Sunday.
No voy a dimitir. No voy a dimitir. No voy a dimitir.
I will not resign, he said over and over again to an extraordinary General Assembly called by the Federation. A social assassination is taking place, he said. The 46-year-old came forward on the list after Spain's 1-0 victory for England. Rubiales apologised for the kiss on Monday before FIFA, the world football's governing body, opened disciplinary proceedings against him. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said Rubiales' initial apology was not enough. The operator of the Fukushima nuclear plant says seawater samples taken around the facility are safe. TEPCO's test results come a day after the release of treated contaminated water from the plant in Japan, which was destroyed in a tsunami in 2011. The discharge into the Pacific Ocean has sparked protests in the region and retaliation from Beijing. Chinese officials have called Japan's decision to release the water extremely selfish and irresponsible, despite the UN's nuclear watchdog approving the plan. And footage has been released of the Moon rover on India's Chandrayaan-3, exploring the surface of the lunar South Pole. The spacecraft landed on the unexplored South Pole of the Moon on Wednesday, making India the first country to achieve the feat. The Indian Space Research Organisation said the rover will now begin conducting experiments.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon. Welcome to Sports News. Nine-time African champions, the Super Falcons of Nigeria, unbeaten run in the group phase of the World Cup that had higher-ranked teams that included Australia, Canada, and Ireland, has not gone unnoticed by FIFA. The girls, who eventually bowed out of the tournament in a round of 16 to England via penalties, have moved up 8 places in the latest FIFA ranking released earlier today by the world's football governing body. They now occupy the 32nd position from 40th position in June. World Cup debutant Morocco, who also reached the round of 16, were the biggest gainers in the continent as they jumped 14 places to 58th position. Meanwhile, world champion Spain have rewritten the history books with their maiden crown, which has resulted in a stunning jump from 6th to the 2nd spot. The champions could have been top, but missed out in the 35 points at stake in their heavy 4-0 defeat to Japan in their final group stage game. As a result, it is Sweden who sit at the top of the ranking for the first time ever. The US, England, France, and Germany are all in the top 10. Now, Americans Noah Lyles has won his third World 200 meters title to become the first main sprinter since Usain Bolt in 2015 to seal the sprint double at the World Athletics Championship this evening. Lyles, who charged to 100-meter gold last weekend, clocked 19.52 seconds for the win, with teenage teammate Ariane Knighton claiming silver in 19.75 seconds, and Botswana 20-year-old Lisili Teboga claimed the bronze medals in 19.81 seconds. Meanwhile, Jamaica's Shericka Jackson produced the second fastest women's 200-meter time in history of 21.41 seconds to destroy a top-class field and retain her title in Budapest. The 29-year-old Jamaica's victory was never in doubt as she ran a superb bend to enter the straight with a clear lead, leaving the others to battle for the minor medals. That sports news is back to you, Kaede.
Thank you, Chris. And the main news again. 22 of the 36 military personnel who died during an attack by bandits and a helicopter crash in Niger State were today buried in Abuja, with heartbroken family members saying goodbye to their loved ones amid tears. And ECOWAS has clarified that it has not declared war on the people of Niger Republic. The regional bloc also stated that it has no plan to invade the country. Well, that's the news at 10 for tonight, everyone. Thank you for watching. I am Kaede Okikulu. Good night.